All right. I think we're in for a special treat today. Our speaker today is Timber Hawkeye. Now, when I walked in, I noticed he had two books out there, one called The Buddhist Boot Camp. And if you think you get a drift about who he is, then he comes out with another book this year called Faithfully Religionless. So I've often heard it said that if you try to describe something, you always leave something out, and you limit the potential of it. So I'd rather have Timber come up and speak to us and let him describe who he is and what he wants to share with us. Timber?
Hi. I always show up and I never know what to expect, and it usually works out for me. My best friend and her daughter go to church every Sunday, and after church they go to the exact same restaurant every week. And last week they left church, they're in the car, and her daughter's cell phone goes bleep, and it gives her 6 minutes to the restaurant. It knew. The phone knew where they were going next. And and it just solidified for me how much what we essentially are is a pattern of behavior. And as such, our behavior can often be predictable, because the way we respond to a situation the first time is likely the way we'll respond to it the second time, the third time, and so on. And in the 3 years that I was on the road with both books, one thing became very apparent is that we create a lot of our own suffering because we identify as victims, and we don't even realize that we're doing it. A lot of it is built into our language. Every time you say, I have to, you're saying, I'm a victim. Poor me, I have to go to work tomorrow. And I invite you to reevaluate that. You don't have to go to work tomorrow. You choose to go to work tomorrow. Own that choice. And see people, oh no, I don't choose to. I have to pay the mortgage. You choose to pay the mortgage on that big house. Own that choice. Celebrate it. There's a big difference. I was talking to my sister, and she said, oh, I have to pick up my son from soccer practice, and I have to take my daughter to gymnastics, and I have to cook dinner for my husband, and I'm like, stop. Are you not describing the life you've always wanted? And she goes, yeah. The husband, the kids, the PT. I'm like, then stop complaining about it, because you're missing out on it by complaining about it. Sometimes I go online and I invite people and I say, your mission for today is to go all day today without complaining. And it could be 5 o'clock in the morning, and people are like, oh, too late. I'm like, you just woke up. And I think we have this pattern of identifying as victims when we say, I have to go to work, I have to do this, I have to do that, I have to go. A friend of mine told me that, I have to go to my friend's birthday party. Eesh. If I was that friend and that's how you felt about it, I would rather you not come. And so changing our language, our perspective on it from I have to I choose to, or I want to, or better yet, I get to. Oh my gosh, I get to pay an electric bill every month. How fortunate am I? I could just flip a switch and there's light. I get to do that. Do you see how that difference in language changes how we view it? And I don't think the problem is the world so much as it is the way we look at it. And people identify as victims constantly. And in the guided meditation before we started today, I invited us to own our feelings, that we choose how we feel. I invited us to think back to a really happy moment in our lives, and everyone's posture kind of straightened up and their smiles, on their faces lit up because they were imagining a really happy time in their life. And then I invited us to think of a sad time in our lives, and the posture went down, sad. Now, nothing in this moment was either happy or sad, but through the power of thought, we were able to control how we feel, and yet constantly throughout our lives, we victimize ourselves. We say, I can't help the way I feel. Or worse yet, we make it someone else's responsibility. We say, you make me feel. that's so detrimental to our own feeling of empowerment that we're in control. Like, oh, you make me feel. And Eleanor Roosevelt said, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. And I not only agree, but I believe no one can make you feel anything without your consent. And so there's all these patterns that we've created that work against us. What's wonderful is that we've created the patterns, which means we create new ones. We can find a whole new, I was talking yesterday about how, and it's funny that it follows a song, but like you get a song stuck in your head, right? We've all had that happen. And that's a good sign. That means you can get your mind to focus on the same thing for an extended period of time. That's good. But we do need to be a little more mindful about what it's focused on. Because we are what we eat, and we eat with our eyes and our ears, not just with our mouths. And if all you're consuming is that negativity and the paranoia and all that stuff, you're going to be scared and you're going to be paranoid because that's what you're eating. We're consumers. We're consuming information constantly. So, with no disrespect, I know you invited us to turn on the TV and listen to the news. I'm inviting you not to. It's CNN, constantly negative news. And I'm not suggesting that we stick our head in the mud and pretend nothing is happening. Quite the opposite. I'm inviting us to take a step back and look at the big picture. Because when you zoom out enough, you realize what a brilliantly wonderful, beautiful world it is. But if you zoom in on any one thing, I talk about this a lot. Some of you may even have this. You know those mirrors that people have in their bathrooms? That if you flip it, it's like 10 times magnified? Nothing looks good in that mirror, right? Someone's like, I don't know, I look good in that mirror now. The same is with the world. Is when you zoom in on anything that close up, it's going to look like a mess. But when you zoom out enough, you realize that it is all perfectly balanced. It is all perfectly beautiful. And the first principle in my first book is that the opposite of what you know is also true. It invites you to take that, and we can't ignore the orange elephant in the room. So when you zoom out and you realize that the opposite of what each of us knows is also true, you really see how divided we are. And I think the beauty in that is that it's reflecting back to us how divided we are internally. And this is what we can fix. We can't fix that. We can fix this. We can end the internal turmoil and find peace within, because we can't live at peace with others if we don't have peace within. It's amazing to me how many people try to lead a positive life with a negative attitude. You can't do it. Keep trying if that's your thing, but at some point, reevaluate and go, what's happening? And don't point the finger away from you, because, people say, oh, I'm stuck in traffic. You are traffic. Saying I'm stuck in traffic implies that everybody else is in your way. Saying the world isn't going right implies that the way you think is right is what should be universally agreed upon. It's not going to happen. It's never happened, and it's never going to happen. In fact, if you've studied NVC, nonviolent communication, the word should is one of the most hostile words in our language. And bless you. And we're constantly shooting all of our other people. We're shooting all of ourselves. And again, we have a pattern. So the invitation is not to say, oh, I'm a terrible person. It's to go, hey, I have this pattern. I've been doing this for 30 years this way, and it's clearly not working. Because the problem isn't that somebody cut you off from the freeway, it's that you let it upset you yet again. The invitation is, how can that keep happening? Because trust me, it will keep happening. How can you change your story around it so it doesn't upset you? I had a woman who said, well, when somebody cuts me off, I just pretend they really have to pee. I'm like, oh, that's brilliant, because then it doesn't upset her. She's like, oh, by all means, go ahead. It's still just a story, but this one doesn't upset her, like the other story, which is, it's always those jerks in BMWs. Because then she has a story about jerks in BMWs, and then she sees one parked, and she gets upset. We all have these stories, right? We all have a pattern of behavior. Rita Rudner, the comedian, was talking about how in her marriage, her job is to take out the garbage. And she said, you know why? Because the first week we were married, I accidentally took out the garbage. You have to be very careful what you do that first week. And as such, we have to be very mindful of what we do. In the second book, he mentioned faithfully religionless. I describe it, like I said earlier, you take a piece of paper and you fold it in half. You create a crease. Just by doing something one time, you've already created a pattern. You want to fold it again, it's going to want to fold back the same way you already folded it. Gandhi said that happiness is when what you think, what you say, and what you do are all in alignment. Well, how can we live in alignment with our values if we're not really clear about what they are? The invitation is for us to take a time out and write down what our core values are. Write down a paragraph describing the kind of life you want to lead and the kind of person you want to be. Cross-reference it with the life you're living. You'll see where you have some work to do. And what's nice is that you're inviting yourself to be the best version of you there is. And you're going to create a pattern of living in line with your values, whatever those values are. It could be something as simple as, and again, when I do the book tour, it was very interesting because when I was in California, this was it started in January, everyone was very upset. What were they upset about? Oh, vaccinations was the big thing. Don't vaccinate my children, you're poisoning them. If you do this, I'm going to move to Canada. And then I went up to Oregon and they were very upset about fluoride in their tap water. Stop poisoning our children. If you do this, I'm going to move to Canada. When I got to Washington, raise our minimum wage and legalize marijuana. I think the two are related. But everywhere I went, everyone was white-knuckling their way through something. They were so upset, just furious, and they were trying to change something. And I like Mother Teresa's invitation. She said, if you invite me to an anti-war rally, I won't go. But if you invite me to a pro-peace rally, I will be there. So my invitation is for us to promote what you love instead of bashing what you hate. Because a lot of us are out there fighting against something, and you're white-knuckling. You're creating tension in your body that is harmful to you. I think you're going to lead a much happier, simple... If you acknowledge that the opposite of what you know is also true to someone else somewhere else because of their time, place, and circumstance. Someone here is, I'm sure, fighting for rescuing dogs and rescuing animals and animal rights. And someone on the other side of the world just had dog for lunch. Time, place, and circumstance. Rumi said, beyond right and wrong, there is a field. I will meet you there. I want to set up camp there. And I take it to an extreme. That whole opposite of what you know is also true. If somebody tells me that the sky is green, I don't argue with them. I don't say, no, it's not, it's blue. And I don't try to bring up proof to back up my claim. I don't Google it. I just walk away from that conversation knowing that to some people, the sky looks green. How much more peaceful would life be if we just loosened our grip? And why can I do this? Why do I not feel the need to defend how blue the sky is? Because the blueness of my sky is not at all jeopardized by how green someone else perceives it to be. It's still just as blue to me, just as the sky is green to them. And we can coexist if we don't try to fight over, I'm right, you're wrong. If we don't try to make ourselves feel superior by making someone else inferior. An autobiography of a yogi, it's called Feeling Tall by Cutting Off the Heads of Other Men. Surely there's a healthier way for us to feel very confident in our values, in our beliefs, in our stance, and do everything in line with our values without having to stomp on somebody else's. Be clear of what your core values are and cross-reference all your decisions, what you drink, what you eat, what you do, where you work, where you live, with your values. And are you living in line with your values? I've seen people out there, diehard vegans, and it's interesting, they're so angry. And it's not, you know how to tell if someone's vegan, right? They'll tell you. And I was invited to give it's true. And it's funny, because even with me as a vegan, I was invited to give a talk at a vegan festival, and they were so angry. They were so compassionate towards animals, but they were so angry towards their meat-eating brothers and sisters. It was really interesting. And I'll tell you, nothing makes me want a bacon double cheeseburger more than an angry vegan. And so It's an invitation for us to reevaluate that not everyone is where we are. Everyone has their truth. Everyone is in a different state in their life, and we can't push our beliefs on other people. We don't like it when it's done to us. Don't do it to other people. Look at your own life. A lot of these angry vegans, they had leather seats in their car. All these people are fighting for equality and all that. When I do the book tour, I couch surf. I sleep on people's couches along the way. And it was interesting because they would be all about, organic or vegan and then they have Crest toothpaste in the bathroom. And now a lot of people don't know, but Crest tests its products on animals. Colgate does not. So every time you're at the store, for example, you have an invitation to either live in line with your values and say, oh, I don't believe in animal cruelty, I'm going to get Colgate. But then you go, Crest is 20 cents cheaper. If you get the Crest, then you're saying, you're creating a pattern of following greed and fear instead of your values. And then that becomes your pattern. Does that make sense? The way we do one thing is the way we do all things. It doesn't make sense? If you allow greed to make your decisions for you, that's going to be your go-to checkpoint. How is it going to benefit me most? Forget my values, forget everything else. How is it going to benefit me? There is no me. I imagine all of us like roots underneath a tree. We're all interconnected. And when it rains, as little as it does here, it's detrimental for one of us to say, well, I'm going to collect all the rainwater I can for me. Screw the other roots. The whole tree, it's take as much as you need and let go of the rest. Trust that more will come when you need it, because it's all for the benefit of the tree. It's all for the benefit of the whole, not the individual. And so a lot of our suffering, when someone asked me, and I did the book tour across the UK, what is American culture like? And that's a really tough question to answer, because I don't think they realize in the UK how big we are. And that culture in Southern California and Northern California is different, let alone California, Texas, New York. But one thing that is consistently true is our addiction to bigger, better, faster, and more. We want more. More acreage, more stuff, more things. And for a simple reason. We haven't defined what enough looks like. If you haven't identified what enough is, how are you ever going to have it? Does that make sense? And if you're going to have a song stuck in your head, instead of saying, I don't have enough, which is kind of our mantra, we wake up in the morning, I didn't get enough sleep, I don't have enough money, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not skinny enough, etc. That can't be your mantra. That's exhausting. But if you make a new pattern of making a list of everything you're grateful for, of I have enough, or better yet, more than enough, that becomes a song stuck in your head. And you're going to look at the world through the lens of abundance, rather than the lens of lack. And that's just it. You're in control of all of this. Technically, I'm Jewish. I'm ordained Buddhist. My mantra is Hindu. And my morning prayer is the Catholic prayer of St. Francis of Assisi. My altar has Jesus on it, Buddha, Tyler Durden, and St. Francis, and they get along just fine. I was told that to finish up with a prayer, and anyone not familiar with the prayer of St. Francis? A few people? Awesome. I included it in the book, and I included both the original version of it and how I changed it. Now, the prayer is addressed to God. Now, if you're not comfortable with the word God, tough. No, I'm kidding. If you're not comfortable with the word God, add an O. Good. Or Mother Nature, or universe, or the energy, or I have a friend who sends his prayers out to Bob. Whatever resonates with you. But the idea is to acknowledge that there's good within me, there's good within each of us. And conversely, there's a God within and there's an ego within. And it's not about one fighting the other. It's not about doing away with the other. It's about making peace with the fact that there are two separate beings within us, at least two, right? It was little kids. There was a devil on one shoulder and an angel on the other. And the idea is not to do away with one. It's to make peace with both. And so every morning when I wake up, I say good morning to the God within, and I say good morning to the ego within too. I personify them. I say, there's a Gandhi within me and there's a Hitler within me. I think it's really important to acknowledge they were just men. I'm capable of what both of them did. That's really empowering because I can then choose which way to go. And that's what I love so much about the prayer of St. Francis. If you've studied cognitive dissonance or anything, it gives you the tools with which to navigate through life. The original says, Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. Grant that I shall not so much seek to be consoled as to console, or to be understood as to understand, or to be loved as to love. For it's in giving that we receive, it's in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it's in dying to self that we are born to eternal life. Now that sounds really beautiful, but I had a really hard time with it. It starts off by saying, Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. I don't know if it's because English is my second language, but that really bothered me. It implied that I wasn't already, which meant I started my everyday from a place of lack. Please, please, make me something that I'm not. It just felt counterproductive. I don't know if that makes any sense. It felt like every day, here I am at the bottom again. And so I changed it. And now I wake up and I sit, and I remember just testing it out. I'm like, all right, I'm just going to do that. And I said, I'm like, I am an instrument of peace. And whoa, that felt different. I felt like, whoa, that feels heavy. That feels like a call of duty. That feels like, what do I do with this? What do I do as wait, there's more to the prayer. Where there's hatred, sow love. Where there's injury, pardon. Where there's doubt, faith. So not only am I an instrument of peace, but I have the tools with which to be that. But I still misunderstood the prayer. I thought it meant for me to go out in the world and fix what's out there. Where there's hatred, sow love. Where there's injury, pardon. Where there's doubt, faith. To fix out there. We can't fix what's out there. Especially not when there's hatred within. How can I spread love when it's in? So I added the word within. Where there's hatred within, I shall sow love. Where there's injury, pardon. Where there's doubt, faith, etc. It's this that I need to fix, not that. So I invite you to reevaluate the language with which you describe yourself, your life, your experience. Drop the have-tos, change to choose-tos. And every time you make any decision, whatever it is, how can you make it in line with your core values? I got on this path because I chose to lead a simple and uncomplicated life. And before you know it, there's 2 books and world tours. And you think, how do you do this? How do you create this selling books but still living in line with your values? Well, I want you to know, every time you buy a book here today, every time you buy a book from me online, another copy is donated to the Prison Library Project. You are putting books in the hands of inmates across the world. That's how I do it. That's how I can do this. That's how I can feel good about charging a credit card. Because I know where that's going, and I want you to know where that's going. Because one of my commitments, one of my values when I took the monastic vows was to be of service. And when you make that commitment, you don't know what that's going to look like. You just say, it's like when you show up to volunteer, you say, I'm here to volunteer. You don't know what they're going to do. If they say chop onions, you go, oh, I don't want to do that. No, you show up and you do what you're called upon to do. And that's why I'm here, because when I'm invited, my job is to say yes. And I invite you to try the same thing. Thank you guys so much.